trouble with these introductions is I could really get a big head, and we need a garage door for me to get out here pretty soon, you know. But we are around the world a little. We actually just sent our first 2 machines into Argentina, so South America. That was our first entry into there. We aren't in South Africa yet, but we do have a guy. We've been there. We've done some pre-work down there. We'll probably have some stuff going that way right away. We do have quite a bit in Australia, and we have a bunch in Mexico and then the United States, and we're just getting into Canada now that we just sold our first units up into there. And we do have interest in Saudi Arabia, Ukraine, and in Europe, some other places. So it's kind of been an interesting ride. But I want to tell you a little about my story, and I'm not really here to impress any of you. I want to tell you that right off. I'm here to hopefully inspire you to take something that has been a part of your life, or that you'll be a part of as you go through the years ahead, and give you some inspiration, at least as to some things that have worked for me. As a precursor, I want to show you just a quick little video clip that's an introduction of our company. And then we're not going to talk a ton about the company, but I want to talk about principles that got us there. So I'm going to see if I know how to run a computer here. She told me all I had to do is point at this arrow and push the button, so let's see if this works. We just need volume now. Okay.
In a consistent manner.
I'll see if I'm smart enough to back that up. How's that?
Quality hay needs precise moisture, and Mother Nature doesn't always provide that moisture in a consistent manner. It's an age-old problem that every hay farmer is aware of. Whether it affects them or not, they understand it. It was the problem that David Staheli, president of Staheli West, was determined to overcome. The summer of 1995 in southern Utah was predominantly hot and dry, and Dave had grown weary of not having any natural dew. He was faced with the decision to bale dry hay that would shatter the leaves and lower the value of the hay, or continue to wait and risk further loss of quality. After seeking inspiration from above, he recalled seeing a tortilla steamer at a taco restaurant, and the idea to apply steam to hay was born. 20 years later, Staheli West is the world leader in steaming forage crops. The dew point generates steam with a diesel-fired burner inside a low-pressure boiler system. The steam is injected into the windrow as the baler picks it up. Baling with steam results in higher leaf retention, an increased baling window, and greater yield at the end of the year. The quality and consistency of hay is how the machine pays for itself, but the real benefit is the quality of life it brings to the operator. Baling on your schedule frees you up to live life as you choose, not as Mother Nature dictates. Customers from Oregon to Pennsylvania and as far away as Australia are living proof that the dew point is changing lives for the better. Staheli West is determined to continually improve the lives of farmers and dew point users around the world as it challenges the boundaries of technology in the agricultural industry. Staheli West, changing agriculture, changing lives.
Now, if we leave this here, it might just keep playing videos all the rest of the day, and that might be fun. We'll see. I guess that will not start. Oh, it is. Steamer stories. I'll push the stop button right here. I got it.
I'm Brandon Yardley.
You can leave it up there if you want to. That's fine. Pictures are pretty. They're 1,000 words, right? So, okay. Well, it's really great to be with you guys today. I got to meet most of you. At least you told me your name, and I won't remember them all as you came in the door. There were a few that snuck by. So if you snuck by, I'd appreciate it if you'd say hi to me when we're done, if you want to. And there's a few of you who I know a little more personally that I know from years past. So it's awesome to see you again. Anyway, today I'd like to talk a little bit about the principles and tell the story at the same time about my life a little bit and the company that we've built over the last few years, and bring a few things into focus that I hope will be helpful to you. I'm a little farm kid from over to Enterprise, And I grew up over there. My dad happened to be the postmaster, so that was not quite what I wished that he'd have been, because I really just was one of those little kids that was on my hands and knees most of the time in the dirt, pushing around toy tractors until I was old enough to actually drive one myself. And it was a great life. Our family didn't have a lot of extra income, and we had a large family. I'm one of 10 children. And so it was really interesting how that kind of lifestyle for me became a real value in my life. My dad was a very good provider, but we didn't have like a new bicycle and knew this and knew that all the time. A large family to support and everything. We worked. My dad was really good at getting us kids to have these little odd jobs around the valley. If there was a farmer that had some bales of hay that he wasn't going to get sold to someone else, well, my dad would buy that kind of stuff. And we would be the ones out hauling it, sometimes with pitchforks, and sometimes not even a bale. He wanted us to have experience, but it was also good experience that gave us the opportunity to learn the value of work. And the value of being able to figure things out that weren't quite perfect. We didn't have, like I remember one time we had an old 52 Chevy pickup that my dad had bought, and he bought this field of hay from a guy that, his name was Stanford Sagers, and for some reason his baler had broken down and he couldn't get it baled up, and there was probably 5 acres of hay, and that is a lot of hay in a windrow. They cut the hay, put it into windrows, it gets dry. My dad decided it'd be a really great experience if his boys could learn what it was like when he was a boy, and they used to pitch hay onto a hay rack pulled by horses. Well, we did have the old truck, but we built out this big rack across the bed with some old sideboards, so it was pretty big, and we spent a couple of weeks, it seemed like forever, pitching that hay and getting it taken into the stack yard where we could feed it. And just things like that we learned how to kind of get along. As I went through, I had opportunities to work on farms in the valley there, in the rural valley over here. As I grew up through my school days, from the time I was about 13 on especially, it was pretty full-time work along with school. That's kind of the way farming was in those days. You worked your little hind ends off. I remember almost every summer day except Sundays. Luckily we had the respect of the Sabbath so we could get a day of rest now and then. But my hours on my calendar from when I was 13 on during the summer was always like 13 and a half hours a day. I remember writing those down, and they were long days for us little guys. But you know what? We loved what we were doing. And we didn't always love some of the things we had to do, but we loved being busy and having the opportunity to work. But through those experiences, there was a lot of observation of things around you. This is one of the principles I really want to stress to you guys, is that every individual has their own personal observation of life that nobody else has. So in this room, there are as many sets of observation as there are people. No one's is exactly alike. Yours is entirely unique to yourself. And that's kind of the way life is if you take the opportunity to observe. As I grew older, after I served a mission and came back home, and I was really blessed to find my wife here at Southern Utah State College at the time. She was my family home evening mother, by the way, if any of you are familiar with that culture. So I married my mother, basically. And she's awesome. But anyway, we went back out to Enterprise and worked for about a year out there. And then I got an opportunity to come to work here in Cedar City, down in the valley, managing a farm for a man named Brent Hunter out here. And I was so excited. It was the most beautiful place on the earth. It's where the Garden of Eden used to be. And it still is. It was just great. We moved there, and that was when I started having more responsibility to manage a farm operation instead of just being a worker there. And even though I had loved it all the time, it became a higher level of responsibility. So it became my responsibility then to decide about the hay harvests, how we were going to do it, the timing, when the hay was right to cut, to rake, to bale, and all of that. Now, probably the majority of you here aren't farmers or come from a farming family. There's a few of you that do. But I'm going to explain a little bit about how this works so you understand kind of what I was dealing with and why that led to what I'm doing today. So when you're putting up forage crops, which are important for the food chain that we all participate in, it's where you get milk and cheese and meat and other things that come from forages, that all feeds into that infrastructure of that industry of food production. And a lot of times when you're eating ice cream, you may not think that some of that came out of a bale of hay, but it does. So don't forget that. Okay, you guys remember that that's important stuff. So the fact that there's some of us who are dealing with just a little piece of that industry may not seem significant to a lot of people until you stop to think that it is an important piece of the chain. Anyway, that process, they say actually in the agricultural industry that forage production is one of the highest management intensive type of farming processes that happen. If you grow corn, you plant it, you hope for the rain or you have irrigation, and then at the end of the year you harvest it. But forage crops are really, really touchy. They have to be harvested at the right time so that there's the right amount of nutrition. They have to be harvested when there's not going to be a weather issue. If you cut hay and put it on the ground in the windrows and you get it rained on, it does a lot of damage. You know how rainstorms can kind of come and go. It has to be laid out a certain way so that it can dry and cure, and then it has to be raked together without knocking all the leaves off from it. Then it has to be continued to cure down until it's completely dry, and then it has to be picked up by a hay baler, but it has to be done when there's a certain amount of moisture back in that hay from natural dew or some other means in order to soften that hay up a little bit so that it doesn't just shatter it to pieces and make it worthless. So by the time you go through all those processes, there's a lot of decisions that have to be made in order to do it right. So you take this nice standing crop of alfalfa that's 18 or 20 inches tall, and you hope that you can preserve the quality of that feed until the cow eats it. And that's always been a challenge. My dad even told the story that when he was young, they did do it with a pitchfork. They would cut it. They had what they called a drop rake that would come and pick up and drop dumps of hay in these piles that they could come by with a pitchfork and throw it on a wagon and tromp it down and take it into the stack yard and unstack it into a nice stack. And it was very artistic how they put up hay back then in order to keep the rain shedding off the stacks and stuff so it wouldn't use it. Well, he got in big trouble one time. Probably the biggest trouble he got in from his dad one time was that he and his brother decided, while their dad was out on the range, that they would go ahead and haul the hay. So they went in the middle of the day, started working with the pitchforks, getting that stuff loaded on the wagon, taking it in and tromping it down in the stack and putting it in the yard at their corrals. When their dad got back, he was so mad because they had done it without having dew on the hay when they started pitchforking it, and they lost all the leaves. They left them all on the ground in the field pretty much because all the leaves fell off, which is the valuable part of the feed. So even when pitchforks were being used, it was still a problem. Well, in modern times, there's balers. That yellow machine at the back of that rig there is the baler. These are big modern balers. They will gobble up about, 60 or 70 tons of hay an hour, way faster than pitchforks used to work. But the same problem still exists today, that if you pick up that hay when it's been completely cured down and you pick it up while it's dry without some sort of moisture coming back into it, like from natural dew, it will knock off the leaves and it will really destroy that. It doesn't make it completely worthless, but it's like eating corn. Like for a cow, it would be like you eating cornflakes off the bottom of the box. And you know that that's the last dish is the one you don't want usually, right? I know that's the way I am. So that's kind of the condition it creates. It really devalues it. It's not worth as much money, and the palatability really goes down. And this has been a problem for ever since there's been hay balers around. So the problem is that when I began managing this farm operation, I was faced often with the weather conditions that there would either be not enough natural dew at night to bale hay, sometimes none if the wind was blowing or it was just a certain time of year, or sometimes there was too much. It seemed like it was either one extreme or the other most of the time, and it has a very narrow window of tolerability. You need to keep hay that is being baled in about a 12 to 16% range of moisture when you're putting it in a bale. But it was really hard to get natural conditions to allow us to do that. So the one year, this was 1994, and I guess some of you, probably most of you weren't even born yet, right? That was a long time ago. Anyway, it was in June of 1994, and I was just really frustrated. We had gone for about 2 weeks with not one night where we had natural dew. And it was my responsibility to decide how to get that hay off the field. We had several hundred acres of hay that was cut. It was kind of a smaller farm at the time. But I had to decide whether I wanted to go out there and just bale that hay and beat it to pieces with the baler, or whether to just wait another day, see if we could get some dew the next night. And you know, it was really, really frustrating because I felt a lot of pressure as the farm manager to do this right. I believe that God knows more than I do. I've always believed that, and I want you to know that I know that's true. And so I do spend time on my knees, and if I have a problem or an issue that I just can't seem to figure out, I decided in this case I'm going to ask for some help here. And it was really interesting. So I got in my prayers this one particular night. I just was like, I've tried to figure out something to do, and I had tried to figure some things out, but nothing seemed to be kind of coming together. How can I get this done? And I had a thought come to me immediately. It was one of the most instant answers to prayer I've ever gotten, and it was, hey, you've seen the girls at Taco Time, the tortillas in this little steamer oven, right? I go, yeah, I remember that. And he said, he didn't actually talk to me, by the way, but I was having these thoughts. I wish he would sometimes. Anyway, I was like, yeah, okay, I do remember that. And it's just like, try it on hay. Steam and tortillas and hay. Okay, so this was while I had all this dry hay on the ground out in the field. The next morning I got up. What do you do when you get answers to prayers? You do something about it, right? You should, because that's good stuff. So I went out, took a box out in the field, and I carefully lifted a really dry brittle windrow, piece of that windrow, put it in the box, carefully down in there, took it to my wife's kitchen. She's going like, okay, what are you doing now? Because I've been the kind of kid that would always, want to redo something. And kitchen wasn't really where she wanted me to be farming, but she had a pressure cooker, put some water in there, got a little piece of hose, put on the little pressure spigot there on there, and got it, put some water in, fired it up, got it steaming. So some steam was coming out this little hose, and I took the hose and put it down in that box of dry hay in about 6 or 7 places for just 2 or 3 seconds each. And I reached in there, and my gosh, it was like that tortilla came out of that little steamer oven at Taco Time. It was soft, and it was slightly moist, but it wasn't wet. And it was kind of warm, but it wasn't hot. And it smelled really good. And I thought, you know what? And I know what good hay feels like when it's ready to bale. It was perfect. And I was like, holy cow, that was an answer. So this was back before there were libraries or internet, anything like that. There was a library. Okay? But there wasn't an internet that I knew of, and I definitely didn't have a computer to do anything with it. bit. I think there were computers, because I actually learned about them at SUU once when I was there. But I did have to go to the public library to learn much. And I got an encyclopedia, opened it up, and I looked up making steam. I knew you have to have a boiler or something like that to do it. I really didn't know anything much about it. And guess what there were? There were pictures of these giant boilers in power plants. And I'm going, wow. They didn't have any cute little boilers on trailers or anything like that. It was all this big stuff. So I was really, you know, not educated in that area at all. But there was, do you guys know what the Yellow Pages is? If you do, raise your hand. Wow, I am impressed. You guys have been studying history. That's great. That's what there was. So I found the word boiler in there, and I found some companies in Salt Lake that were distributors for boilers. And I called them up, and they started sending me stuff in the mail. There wasn't email yet then either, by the way. At least I didn't have it. So they sent me these big packages in the mail of these boilers that they sold and stuff. And so I started making these phone calls, and I put my pencil to paper. I knew enough about math to try to figure out about what I needed. I knew how many tons an hour a baler would put through, and I kind of put that together. So I kind of knew what I needed, I thought. And I started to call these companies and told them what I wanted, and I said, you know, what I need is I need a boiler that I can put like on a hay baler. And they go, on a hay baler. And I was like, yeah, like a trailer kind of a thing that I can put steam into hay while I'm baling. And it was just like, no, we are not going to sell our boiler for you to pull around in a hayfield. Absolutely not. Time after time after time, that happened over and over again. Probably went through 7 or 8 companies, and finally I was again kind of on my knees again one morning, actually, in a little basement office I had, and I was like, okay, Heavenly Father, the idea was great, but the execution of the idea I'm having a little trouble with. And I can't really find anyone that will support this idea of pulling a boiler around in a field. And the phone rang while I was on my knees, this is no kidding. And a guy was on the other end, and he said, hey Dave, you called me the other day, and I just had an idea that popped into my mind. I think I know a company. The company that we represent won't do it, but I think I know a company that will. And he says, Kewanee Boiler back in Illinois. So he got me hooked up with the company that dealt with them so I could get a phone number. I called them up and they said, sure, we'll do that. That was just like another one of those things. So it gave me some confidence that somebody bigger than me was watching out for me, and that I didn't need to be afraid of moving forward, because there were some really direct answers that came to me several times, and actually a lot of times as the process went along, that gave me the confidence to move forward, not having any experience as a businessman or anything else. And I will tell you right now, my plan at that time was not to go into business making hay steamers. It was to bale hay at the farm I was managing. That was what my objective was at the time. But it was when I discovered the hay in the box and steam put together that I thought, wow, this is too good of a... The effects that are happening here are so monumental, honestly they were, that I'm probably going to have to do more than just keep this to myself. So I was kind of going down that stream already. But there was a real value. I want you to think about this, because there's really 5 pillars that I like to bring into the discussion. The first one is the observation pillar that I talked about before and early on in the discussion. That there are things that are unique to me and you, that only we observe, the total things that we observe as an individual. And it's really interesting how your personal observations can come together to do something that is entirely unique. The second pillar is the inspiration piece, and I'm really serious about this too. They told me I could just be honest here and tell you the story, and I'm telling you that that was such a big piece of this. But the inspiration from above, the inspiration from God, could only come with some things that I had observed that He was then able to take the puzzle pieces within my little brain and sort of put them together. You see what I'm saying? If I had not seen the girl at Taco Time putting the tortilla in the steamer oven a few times, where could that have come from? So I was in a unique position because I was farming hay, I was having trouble with dry conditions farming, I had seen a girl at Taco Time, and so God kind of put it together and said, okay, put these pieces together and this will work for you, or at least give it a try. So that inspiration piece has been such a significant part of everything that I have done. I will tell you that we start, and I know that this is, you can't do this everywhere legally, but we start our day by invoking the power of heaven to help us in our work at work. And we do that. We do it regularly. I know other companies that do the same thing, and it has been such a great blessing to us because you just get things that come to you that you put together because of inviting help from somebody who is a way better engineer than any of us are. The other one is getting to where you understand things that these ideas first start coming. I'm going to call this one education because I had come to college, and I'm not proud of this, but I didn't stay through and get a 4-year degree or a master's degree or anything because I was not finding my niche in life. I push my kids to do better than that now, and they've done way better than I did that way. But I had this love of agriculture, and Dean could have really helped me out, I'm sure, if I had just got into it and done that. But these ideas did not come from a formal education, these initial ideas, but I will tell you right now that I have come to be a lover of education. And I have really found it to be so fascinating that when you find something you're interested in, how quickly your mind can absorb information and can kind of start putting things together. I think it's the key to success in education is to become interested in what it is that you're learning. It just completely changes things. I didn't really love writing research papers, in English in high school, and even here when I came to school here. It wasn't my favorite thing to do. But later, as I had experience in my business, I actually loved writing these research papers about what I knew something about, and it just flowed. It was such a different experience when it was something that you had a passion to be involved in and to try to lay out the ideas in front of someone else so they could understand it. And I've done a lot of writing since I've gotten into this whole project and into this business, and I've loved every bit of it. I really have. It's been a lot of fun. But education is where I had to go to the library first off. I didn't know how to make steam. I didn't know what a boiler was. I didn't really understand any of that. So I started from scratch. I used the education I had to do some pencil drafting to draft up the first little machine that I ever built. And it was all done by hand, by pencil, no CAD drawing or anything like that. But that's how the first units came together, was just a pencil and a T-square and some triangles and an eraser and another eraser and another eraser, how that could go. And getting that all put together and getting that machine successfully built over that next year and into the field 1 year later from the time that I had the original conception was honestly a miracle, how it ever came together. Knowing as little as I did, but that education component was such an important thing. The next component I like to talk a little bit about is application. Once you have observations and inspiration and you get some education going to learn how to do something, then to take that knowledge and make application of it in the area that you're trying to address and trying to improve, whatever it is you're doing. That was honestly, again, like a miracle that we got that put together. The interesting thing is there's also going to be you're going to run into bumps of the road always whenever you're doing something like this. I got that little machine in the field in June of 1995, and it was a boiler and a water tank and a generator on a trailer with a little hay baler hooked up behind it. And I was so excited. Took it to the field. I had this little sidecar on that thing that had these little spikes, hollow spikes that walked up and down through the windrow as you drive along. It was really cool. I was really proud of it. Took it to the field the first day. I got my wife and other people kind of come around, you know, to see how, no, I didn't get my wife. I'm sorry. I told the truth, I lied there. She wasn't there, but there were other people there watching. I got the boss on the tractor and I followed along, just walking along, and he was going down there steaming this hay. It worked great until we put the baler behind there, and then when the baler picked it up and baled it, I picked up those bales and they looked horrible. There was no quality to them at all. And I found out that as quick as that steam went into the hay, it would also come out really quick as soon as the baler started moving it through the air again to get it up in and get it put into a bale. So I went home that night, told my wife about my successful day, and that we'd spent all of our life savings on something that didn't work. She was happy. And I said, don't give up. Don't give up on me, baby. That song, some of you might not even know that. But I had some work to do. And it was really interesting, again, how things kind of come together through these kind of experiences. Things don't always work, and they usually don't work very good the first time. So when you're looking at, like a third of you guys, I was told, were really wanting to be entrepreneurs and go into something of your own, it's not going to all come together at first, I promise you that right now. There's also a value in remembering that it's a good thing you can't see the future. I think God was really wise when He kind of veils the future from us. Because if I had seen very far ahead, I would have said, no, I'm not going to do that. It's too hard. There's too many bumps in the road. And if I had seen all the troubles that it was going to take to get to a certain point, I would have said, no, it's too much. Anyway, over a period of about 2 weeks, I finally swallowed my pride and said, okay, what I am trying is not working. I've got the concept and it works, but what I'm doing here is not actually working. And I listened to the boss of the farm, the guy that owned the farm, and said, well, why don't you just take the steam hose off from your little contraption out here and just get some baling wire and wire it back into the front of the baler and just try that, see what happens. And so I did. And this time I went out to the field. I was kind of like Eeyore, had my tail between my legs, and I didn't let anybody go to the field with me that time. I went by myself, and I was like, okay, and I baled up one windrow, and I started coming down the other, and I decided to stop then and check the bales and see how they were looking. I had this steam hose wired in the front of the baler, just pushing steam in there. I got out, picked up the bale, and you know what? That looked good. It looked pretty darn good. I was like, wow, I totally missed this. But I needed to listen a little bit to someone else and not think I had all the answers. That was a really interesting thing I learned too. And it was a key element to what we were able to develop. At that point then, I just developed some hardware to go on the baler itself to distribute that steam evenly so that it could get into the hay effectively as it was coming up into the baler. And that is the concept we've used ever since. So we successfully baled through the rest of that season using steam. And that was the first in the world that had really ever been done that way. It was really cool. The boiler wasn't big enough, so I had to buy a bigger one. And the next year I built another machine. I actually built 2 more machines the next year, one for a little baler and one for a big baler like that. But the machine was not like this. It was still pretty rugged looking. And we successfully got through that next year. And then the next year, the third year, I did a 3rd generation. I built 9 more machines. I was honestly an absolute fool. I don't know why I did it, except that it had to happen that way. I didn't know enough to realize that when I did all of these 9 more machines, 3 for little balers and 6 for big balers, that the wheels were going to fall off when they got to the field. On the big ones especially, they were too heavy and I miscalculated my weights, or somebody had made a mistake. The water tanks started to split out. I mean, that was a year of life, I'm telling you. It was rough. It was one of those years I was really glad I couldn't see the future, because it was rough. We got through it though, and by the time we were done with that year, there were 3 companies that were interested in what I was doing. One of them was John Deere, one of them was AGCO, which builds the Massey Ferguson line, like these balers here. And one of them was New Holland, which is another big hay tool company. They all got interested in what I was doing, and we ended up by 1998, signing an agreement with John Deere to have them take this technology and finish their development and take it to the market. That was an interesting step. I learned a ton from them, but after 8 years of working with them doing a lot of field work down here in the valley at our farm, they had their machine ready to go to the market. And then how proud was I? You know, I was going to have a machine that I helped develop the technology with John Deere's logo on there, a big worldwide company, and then they backed out right before I was supposed to go to market. There were some things I wasn't real happy that they were doing. They were kind of taking it in the wrong direction, I felt like, but it worked. But they ended up pulling out of it because of some issues they had with the baler that they were using and some power requirements that they said they just didn't think they could get it into the market. So I got that back. And that's when education kicked in. I had to teach myself how to use a 3D CAD design program. I decided to go back to the drawing board and do it myself. In a little farm shop down in the valley, designed this machine for about a year. And it was that machine basically that you see right there, not that same one, but the style. It was a lot of fun. Again, the way learning came into play, it came so fast when you're interested in something. It just was like pouring into me how to get some of this stuff done. And I'm telling you, if any of you are thinking of really going into business, you're going to find that sometimes the road goes really, really fast and you just have to hang on and keep up with it. Anyway, I know our time is going really quickly, and so I need to wrap up pretty soon. The thing that kept me driving on is this next pillar of motivation. And I want to talk about this for a little bit, because I think that motivation is one of the most interesting things that can help you succeed or maybe fail. And that is to examine why it is that you want to do what you do. For me, money has never been the issue. I've never, ever pursued this with the idea that I was going to become wealthy. I really had a passion for the industry that I love, of improving something and changing people's lives. Because as we got started using this technology over those years of development, it completely changed everything about our family's lifestyle. Was so improved, I didn't have to walk out on the lawn 15 times a night to see if there was dew on the grass so I knew if it was time to bale hay or not. I had control over the situation. We brought something that was really out of control in this industry into a very controlled environment. So my motivations were more, what can this do for the lives of people? You might have noticed our little vision statement at the end of the little video is changing agriculture, changing lives. And I'm going to tell you right now, that drives everything that we do in our company. Just those 4 words. We boiled that down to the very minimum of what it is that we are about. Motivation to me is a moving force of action. And if your motivations are to make money, you can do it. If your motivations are to change the world in which you live and bring something that really changes history, it's so much more satisfying. And it isn't that you need your name on it even. Like, I don't really care. I love that when we have customers come back to us, our machine actually makes money for them. This machine costs about $225,000. The one in the middle, that yellow one there. It will make, in its 25-year lifetime, about $5 million of extra income for the guy that owns it because of the values it brings to the table. We prove it all the time. It pays for itself in a year, usually, by the values it brings back into what they're producing. So it's really easy to move that way and to sell that way. But to me, that's kind of a big deal, because you want it to be that way. But the bigger thing is, we always hear this, they say, that has changed my life. I can go to baseball games with my kids now because I know I can go out and bail when I need to. I can go to dance recitals, I can serve in my church, I can spend time, I can go to the doctor with my wife when she's getting a checkup for a baby that she's having. We hear those kind of things constantly. And those are the things that really bring the deep satisfaction to me and to the people that work for us over there. We love that. I would say, as you look forward, decide who you are. Decide what your personal vision is, what your personal mission is. What are you really about? If it's that you want to be on Wall Street, that's okay. But think about, why do you want to be there? If you want to be an entrepreneur in some other area, if there's something you want to discover, something that there are ideas that I promise will come from this group that don't exist today. One of our values is that we will never sell anything that already exists out of our company. We are always going to bring something new to the table when we produce a new product. We've got some new ones we're working on now that are very unique also, very revolutionary. But you can decide what it is. Some people like that niche market kind of mentality. Some people like to be really competitive in the commodity side of things and be the best at that. So it doesn't matter. It's just your own motivations are going to drive kind of the passion that you're able to bring into whatever it is that you do. Oh, I wish we had like another hour, but we don't. So I'm going to have to slow down now. I have a tendency to go kind of long. I just want you to know how much fun it is. It's really fun being an entrepreneur, but it isn't the path I had originally decided to go when I got into agriculture. I really would have been just happy running a nice farm operation. But you know, being an entrepreneur is nice because I can wear these worn out boots and it's okay. I love it. The boss doesn't tell me I can't wear them. And I love, I've come to love business. I will tell you that. It was very intimidating to me at first, but I've come to love it. It is a fun life that we live as we help the industry that we're involved in. And I hope that my little story is good. There's lots of things I'd love to say more, but I'm going to wrap it up now and open it. If any of you have a few questions, I know we're right up on time. I believe 12:20, right? So, anybody have questions or comments or anything before we wrap up? Or do we not have time?
Maybe we'll save questions for after.
Okay.
That's all right.
Yeah.
I do want to present Dave with the Thunderbird Award.